Okay, well guys, this is my ZXR250. Today I'm going to take the carbs off and I'll kind of, I guess, do a bit of a step-by-step on how to do it. It's not very hard. Mind you, I've done it so many times it's not funny. I can't record it while I'm doing it, so it'll be a bit of a stepper. So what you need to do before you do anything is you need a few tools, not many. You need a really long screwdriver. You need that to put it in the side down there and get the carbs off. You need an 8mm socket, a 10mm socket, and you need a Allen wrench. Now I measured that to be 7.61mm, which will be something in American. Pretty much you start by taking off the side fairing. You only need to take off the left hand side fairing, so I'll do that. Right, so the fairing's off. Now you guys will need to probably take these two bolts out, because there's should be a little piece of pipe attached to the bottom of the airbox, which will run through and drip oil onto the ground. I pulled it off because it makes the process way quicker and I do it all the time, and because the previous owners actually stripped this one down here, so it takes ages to get it out. So in my case I don't need to do that, but you guys will probably have to do it. You may not from memory have to actually take this off to get it out, but to try and thread that through there with this on, I think was very difficult. Now we take our ridiculously long screwdriver. We need to undo the carbs from the collars. Now I don't know if you can see that or not. Probably not. There's, oh, you can see that one down there. There's 4 of those screws, you need to undo them. So I'll undo those. Right, now I need to take the snorkels off the tank and take the seats off so we can get the tank off. So obviously pop your key in there, pull that off. Now I'm recording this because a few people seem to struggle with this. To get the seat off you need to pull this thing here back, and that'll pop up. Mind you, I probably need 2 hands to do it, but you get the idea. Now you need to unbolt the tank, which is there and there. You need to pull these side bits out. Now what I do is I pick the tank and swing the front of it around here, and I pop it on a rubbish bin, which I have next to the bike. So the obviously all the petrol connects down here, so I just swing the front around, light down on the bin, and then unplug the fuel. There's two pipes going to the bottom of the petrol tank. It won't leak, so you can pull both off and you're sweet. And anyway, it's got an angle so you can sort of lean it down. So I'll take the tank off. Alright, so the tank's now off. And we need to take the airbox off, so pull this off, undo the bolts, down there and down there. They're all 10mm bolts. It's important not to overdo these up when you put it back together again. I actually just do them all up by hand. So I'll take the airbox off. Right, so carbs are now off, so make sure the handle's all the way in to give maximum length to the choke, and I pull the choke off, which I'm not sure I'll be able to do while videoing it. There you go. Now you'll notice I actually took this corner off. I filed that corner off, and I recommend everyone should do that, so I can just easily pull it off like that. Has no impact. And now you need to remember to take the spring off. Don't want that dropping down into the engine. Alrighty, now you've got this pipe here. Now it's quite important that you don't get petrol in here. If you do get it in, you can get it out, but it's quite a bit of a pain. It goes through over here and you can get petrol stuck in there because it sags down. So you pull that off and you'll be able to push the bike the other way around to give the throttle cable maximum length. Oh yeah, this always catches me out. Remember to take that off. Now you see I've put a piece of black tape on there. That's so I can remember which one's on the top and which one's on the bottom. Obviously the first time I did it I put them the wrong way around and the throttle worked the opposite way around. Now that I've done it heaps, I don't actually pull these out of this bracket, but that's because I've done it a lot. But in essence all we need to do now is pull that pipe out and unscrew this screw here. And then the carbs are free pretty much. While we're here, I took these off, and though it doesn't look ideal, these plastic collars were so much narrower than the actual aluminium head, and I cut them back. They were kind of off centre, so there's a bit of metal there, but that's kind of how it was, but around the top they'd come in quite a lot, and this came stuck in quite a long way as well, which really did narrow the whole thing down. So I took them off. You need to make sure you buy proper gasket stuff though. I made the mistake of just using sump gasket, and the petrol turned it to pus, so you've got to get proper petrol gasket material in there. While I've had everything apart, I replaced all of these vacuum hoses and fuel hoses and whatnot. This one's what, 20 years old now, so they were getting a bit saggy, and I thought they might have been the cause of one of my problems, which turned out to be incorrect. While we're in here, if you want to change the thermostat's under here. You can just pull off these things here. You can leave the water one on, luckily, and you can actually get these bolts off and get the thermostat out without having to take this off or the head, which is pretty lucky. It only just fits. So carbs are obviously off. Here they are, full of petrol. Depends on where in the world you are, but I use it to kill weeds, but you're supposed to dispose of that in a better means than that. So we'll crack the carbs open. Right, carbs are off. Now I replaced all the screws. I've actually got stainless steel Allen keys there. Stainless steel is probably a bit over the top, but that's what I had lying around, because I'll just put them back in. Those standard Phillips screws are just so soft and mushy that if your carbs are anything like mine, when I tried to take them off after 20 years, it was a no-go. So I had some of them had to slot and use a flat head like this to get off, and I went to Allen keys, which will last forever pretty much. So you've got your pilot screw here, which is supposed to be 2.5 turns out. Mine's currently at 3 1/4. Since I'm changing the float height, I'll probably reduce that to 3. You got your main jet here and the holder, and you got your slow jet down there. Obviously got your floats, and you've got your float needle and seat under there. So I'll crack this off. No, I won't. I'll actually measure the height first. Alright, this is the new seat and float. Now this has got a little spring in it right at the very end. Now according to the manual, you're supposed to set the float height without compressing that little needle in. I doubt you'll be able to see that. Get all out of focus. Well, maybe you can. Right. So here are my carbs. They say you're supposed to, that's a needle in there, set this on an angle where when the float is sitting like that, it's not actually compressing the spring. I have tried to do that, but it just seems craziness, because that means you actually have to hold the carbs at an odd angle, and you don't have enough hands, and it's all kind of actually slightly different, so the angle, yeah, too hard. From my point of view, it doesn't really matter. I'm just doing a comparative. So I just sit them on the back of the slide carbs, slide covers, and measure the height. Now I've done that, which does only just slightly compress the needle. Now I've got 13.8 millimeters. So how I did that was just pretty much bang that on there, measure the height, try and keep that 90 degrees like that. I need to bounce this a little bit to get it the right height. Obviously it'll move up, the numbers will vary. Interesting thing is that I took another ZXR's carbs off, and they averaged across all of them was between 11.5 and 12 millimeters, and I've got 13.8, which I believe is my fundamental problem. So I'm going to change the float seats and valves now. Obviously need to take this screw off, and under there is another screw which is there, and then you can pull them out. Now, like I've mentioned before, these carbs were well and truly stuck together, so one of them I had to cut that with a little Dremel, with a little cut-off blade, so I could fit a flathead screwdriver and undo it. It's no problem. Clean them up properly. Alright, so pulled the float off, don't lose the pin. Got the new needle, old needle, new seat, old seat. Now it's quite interesting that the length of the little spring pin there is much longer than on the old one. And obviously this has the filter on it, which needs to be transferred to the new one. Now this is quite important because when people are looking for fuel issues, I don't know if I've ever come across anyone that actually checks to see if that filter is blocked or not. So it's not just the jets, this filter can be obviously covered in a whole lot of mush. There's no inline filter in the fueling system on the bike. Your only filter is in the tank and here. So definitely keep an eye on that. I haven't tried to take that off, so I'm not sure how hard that's actually going to be. Well, I guess we're going to find out. One thing I'd mention before we go on, looking at these are the old ones. Looking at them, they actually are perfect. Normally they need to replace when there's like a neck out of this. Now these don't have that at all, which is why I didn't replace them before. But I'm glad I have, because these definitely won't be the original needles that are in the bike. The bike's done too much mileage, I would think. So I was concerned that maybe the seats had actually worn. But now, from what I can tell, maybe it was just the fact that the spring inside here is sagged, because while these won't be the original, they could have been sitting in the bike for 10 years doing nothing. Which is why I'm going to turn the carb over and measure the CV spring to see if that's sagged as well. Right, so I've changed the needles on the outside to cylinders and checked the height. Height's now 14.15ish, which is no surprise because the little pins seem to be a bit longer. It's quite interesting though. These are quite saggy, well, these are very, very positive. And obviously with it sitting on the slide carb, that would be the correct way to measure it, because these are not compressing that spring at all. So I need to adjust the float level. Right, so I'm going to set the float height, and it gets a little bit complicated because the float height is actually, the carbs as they are now, when you set the carbs, they're actually upside down. So you lower the float measurement, which will actually increase the petrol in the float bowl, because they would normally be like that. So it gets a bit tricky, because some people measure the float level while it's on the bike, which is quite different to measuring the height like I am here. So mine's are over 14 now, so I'm going to reduce that to 12, and fingers crossed the bike will actually be heaps better now. I'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to hold my breath. How many times I've taken it apart. Alright, I've adjusted all the float levels to 13 millimeters, which is what the manual says, so it's like a millimeter lower, so more fuel in the bowl than previously, but still a millimeter less fuel, I guess, than the other carbs that I took off of a different bike and measured. We'll see how this goes though. Right, I'm now going to change the pilot screws. Now I bought one of these, which is actually really awesome. 90 degree there. You're going to put a little Allen key in there and rotate that round. It's got little markers on it so you can count out how many times the pilot screws are. I originally bought this so I could change the pilot screws on the bike, like the manual says. but honestly I would pay to see someone do it on the bike. I reckon it's impossible. There's too much piping in the radiator pipe. I don't think it's possible, but I still use it here on the bench. So I'm going to screw those in a bit, because I've changed the float height, so it should make it a little bit richer, so I want to lean it out a little bit. That's just on idle really. So I've taken the slide cover off. Here's your spring and holder. That's your slide with your needle. And the all important, it's a bit hard to see, there's a little piece of brass there, make sure you don't lose that. But I am here to measure the length of that spring to see if it's sagged. So I've measured my spring. It's 100 long, which is the same as the other Carbs, so I think that's fine. I've got it apart. People commonly put washers under here to jack it up to make it a little bit richer, which you've actually seen here. I've tried a whole bunch of them, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3s. They've all been a disaster. To me it seems it's a bit rich, but I think I need to fix my fueling problem first. While we're here, there is the slide mod as well, which I haven't done, which basically you drill another hole here, or make that one bigger, which will allow the slide to move up and down, well, up more quickly. I calculate about a 1.5mm one would be the go. I haven't tried it because I think it would make my current issues worse, and obviously once you do it it's very hard to go back. Theoretically could fill it, which is why I like the idea of drilling an additional hole rather than drilling the existing one out. The slide, the needle goes through there, but the other way around, goes that way around. So if we drill it out, that'll enable that to open more quickly, which means we should be able to apply the horsepower we have more quickly, or you could say you get better throttle response. The possible negative downside is you may actually make it too lean, but it's pretty common in the dynojet mods, and the ZXR400 recommends that you drill that hole out. I'm pretty keen to try it, but a little bit hesitant at the same time. But obviously I need to fix my existing fuel issue first, because drilling that out would make it much worse. Just going to put it all back together again now. Alright, so I've put the covers back on and everything in. Now it's important before you do this up properly is to check to see if the slide still works. It should be easy and not get stuck. It's pretty common when you put the spring and stuff back in that you haven't put it in correctly and it gets stuck. If that happens, don't push it, take it apart, just reassemble it. It's just how the spring sort of catches on the stuff on the inside. Yeah, all good there. No noises of springing. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to put the bike back together again. I hope it actually runs better than it did before. Right, so it's back together again, mostly. I'll go for a ride before I put the other bits on, just to make sure it still goes. Still a bit cold. Fine, but on the stand in neutral means nothing, as I've discovered. Let it warm up, hopefully crack a lacquer.